And so to Joe's point, these students all read the same common reading book this year called the Talent Code. And we provided, complimentary copies to all of you so you could all, read a little bit about it. So the Talent Code focuses on developing talent and specifically how we can master our own crafts by understanding 3 different elements: deep practice, ignition, and master coaching. So I would like to speak a little bit about ignition with all of you today. When you think about the idea of ignition, can you tell us a time where you felt truly inspired and ignited to act? And then in that moment, what or who inspired you? If you could talk a little bit about that.
All right, I guess I'll jump in on that one. For myself, I think that you should spend a lot of time defining what success is, and more importantly, what your success is. And it's not about how much money you make. It's more so about self-fulfillment in your personal life as much as your work life. And so I spent a lot of time figuring out what that meant to me. And I kind of used that as my guiding light of, where the job that I am in now, because I thought that it gave me the best opportunity to succeed in what I had, I saw my life, what I wanted it to be. And so my igniting factor, I would say, was when I was growing my network, meeting people, talking to people about their career, listening to some of the stories of other advisors, successful advisors that I respected, a lot of the qualities that they have, the qualities of life, their professional career, the control that they had, a lot of those components were things that aligned with what I defined as success. So that was really the igniting factor for me to get into the industry that I am in now. That was, I would say, was my biggest factor of what got me motivated to do what I'm doing.
I would say if I had to pinpoint one thing that was an ignition for me, I mean, from the time I was very young, I knew I wanted to help others in some way. And I wanted to be a PA because I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to go in the medical field. I want to help people that way. Because my grandfather passed away, and 2 years later, my stepdad passed away very quickly. And I wanted to help people's families and people understand their illnesses in ways that we didn't when my grandpa and my stepdad had passed away. But then, so that was just like an ignition to want to help others. And I didn't know exactly which way that would end up going. I knew which way I wanted it to go. But then when I took psychology, like I say, everything just kind of clicked and it just fell into place. I understood it. I thrived in it. I wanted to learn more, and I had never had something like that before. I had always been really good at school, but I just was good, had all of the subjects. I never had one that I loved as much as when I took that first psychology class, and it just all kind of happened for me. So I would say that was my ignition for what I'm doing now, was that psychology class and really learning what I wanted to do.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
I would say that my ignition came from my childhood. Something that my mom always ingrained in me was to be kind, and that there's always ways to be kind, even when you need to be assertive. And it wasn't until years later when I was in my master's program that really clicked in my brain that my ignition is being kind, and that manifested in so many different ways. Just like something as simple as holding the door for someone, that is something so powerful because there's just like an acknowledgement there, to something like helping someone cross the street, up into now my passion is directing theater. And that helps people in so many different ways because you're retelling a story, And like all literature is helping us understand different aspects of ourselves and of the world.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So as I kind of mentioned before, when I started my current career path, it wasn't what I thought I wanted to do. So my ignition sort of happened after starting this, because the first time I had a long-term subbing assignment, so I got to work with the same kids for several weeks in a row, I got to see how big of an impact the relationship can be with between students and a teacher. And from that point, it sort of drove me to be a lot more passionate about education and deciding to pursue it as a career.
Awesome. Thank you. So again, don't feel compelled to answer all of the questions because I know some of you already touched on this, but sometimes when you think about that moment of ignition, it's actually adversity and maybe a time of harm or pain or discomfort, and that's actually what ends up motivating you and pushing you to move forward. We talked a little bit over the summer about, we have a lot of athletes in the room. So when an athlete gets injured, sometimes that's that motivation to, try even harder to overcome that. So do any of you have any stories or pieces of advice where adversity inspired you to act?
I do. When I was in 7th grade, I tried out for a drama club, and the drama club advisor pulled me aside and said, "Joe, you're terrible. Find something else to do with your life." So naturally, I now have a BFA in theater, and I'm using it quite well. And I've been told, I've been showered with compliments for the productions that I've put on.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm really sorry that someone said that. I think that actually happens to a lot of us in different times in our lives where we're told that something that we really love is not meant for us. I don't know if any of you in the room have been told something like that before. Yeah. Had a few people tell me that, the major that I was going into or the schools that I was applying to, that wasn't possible for me. And I remember thinking, oh no, that's the motivation that I need to tackle that. Thank you. Does anyone else have a story they'd like to share? No? Okay. So a few of you mentioned, either I know with Summer, it was a faculty member here at Lake Erie, or, maybe from childhood, some stories that you had. But can you talk about the support system that you built or the network of people that you built around you that kind of continue to positively impact you? I know at the beginning of the call, we were all talking about networking and how important that is. Could you maybe give some stories about how you started to network and how you started to grow that community? Whether that is, friends or faculty or somebody here at Lake Erie who helped you to kind of guide your path and supply that additional support to help you find your goals and figure that out?
So I actually started building a support system all the way back in high school. I had one teacher. She was my science teacher. She was the head of science club, and she was amazing. And even I still speak to her to this day, and she encourages me and builds me up when I need it. And I think that's important when you're building a system of people around you. But then when I was at Lake Erie and I was building a network here, obviously Dr. Collada was a big part of my support system. She was the one that I went to when I had any kind of questions about what I wanted to do after I got my bachelor's degree. But also Dr. Spiesman. So he is a social worker. And so I went to him when last year, because I had a psychology degree, but I didn't have a license because you can't be licensed with just a psychology degree. I was having trouble finding an internship for my master's program in Lake County because it's surprisingly hard in Lake County. And I went to him and I said, "Do you know anyone? Can you help me?" And it was through him that I found an internship at a substance use agency. And I actually fell in love with that area of social work that I didn't even think about before. but it was directly through him that I got that. He made a call and they said, when can she start? And so it's definitely, you have to find those pinpoint people. I didn't have a ton of people that I kept very close, but I don't think it needs to be a very large group of people, but if you have enough very strong and good people around you, that they have connections, then their connections are your connections. And I think that's really important.
Then for myself, when I started, um, I wanted to learn from the best and most successful advisors that I knew. Um, so I went and talked to as many as I could. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but I knew if I could take, one or two things from each person that I liked, that would help me succeed as much as possible. As I continued to do that, I did develop a closer network of advisors. Now I would say I have, three colleagues that are very close to me that we're constantly bouncing ideas off of. They have, 20 plus years of experience, so they've provided me with a lot of knowledge that, as I get further in my career, I am gaining. But at the same time, by having them, as someone who's gone through what I'm going through now, I feel like that really gives me a leg up. So the direction that you see yourself going, whether, what career path, I would say look out for those people that are in that field, and definitely try to pick their brain as much as possible, learn about their jobs, learn about what made them successful. And that's going to turn into a great support network for you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. So actually, JD, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, because you mentioned playing baseball, I believe you said, while you were a student here in college. And how many of you in this room are athletes? I think almost everyone except for maybe like 4 or 5 raised their hands. Could you maybe talk a little bit about how you balanced being a student athlete with your classes, and some of the things that you were doing to, work on your professional development while you were a student here at Lake Erie?
I would like to say there was some sort of like magic equation, but it was just one of those deals. You just got it done. You did what you had to do to, get your classwork done, get practice. Um, I really wish I could give you some better advice on that, but it was just a matter of whatever needs to be done, do it. I tried to stay involved. I was also an ambassador. So that was a way of specifically getting out and getting to know people. But other than that, I really don't have any specific advice for you. I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. We do have one instructor that her audio